Life Rhythms with Ryan Skyy. Observing the world around me, looking inward, trying to make sense of it all. Hello, my inner explorers. Welcome to Life Rhythms Radio Show. I'm your host, Ryan Skyy. Life Rhythms is a radio show and podcast that revolves around my personal growth journey. As a DJ and producer, I spend a lot of my time observing the world around me, looking inward, trying to make sense of it all. I've been doing it in song form, and now I do it with the radio show. Each episode of Life Rhythms, we feature one guest and one song, and I choose a personal growth topic around that song. I'm excited for today's episode because I've got my guest ARTY with me today, and we're going to be featuring his Alpha 9 project, which is the trance side of the music that he creates, and specifically the song Down to Love, which you heard a snippet of that coming into this segment. This is off of ARTY's new album called New Horizons. And when we feature the Down to Love single, we're going to be talking about specifically the lyric, it all comes down to love. And that reminds me of intuition. So we're going to talk about this kind of like the biological wisdom that we all have ingrained in us that we can use to navigate our life. Like, what does that look like? What are these instincts? How do they help us understand our lives, and how does love play a part of that? I'm going to talk to ARTY about this and get his perspective. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to dive into this conversation with ARTY right here on Adobe Radio. Welcome back to Life Rhythms Radio Show. I'm your host, Ryan Skyy. I've got my guest with me today, ARTY, and we're featuring ARTY's Alpha 9 project.
Yeah.
Right?
Hi.
Hi, ARTY. And also, a little snippet of your song Down to Love played before the segment. We're going to talk about that today.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good song to talk about. Yeah.
I want to tell listeners, so your name's ARTY, and then you have a side project, Alpha 9, right?
Correct. Yeah. But also I have project that's called ARTY, and Alpha 9 is separate project. I would not necessarily say at this point that it's side project. They kind of like equal to each other. It's like I have, massive issues with my identity.
Split personality.
Yeah, split personality pretty much.
With separate logos.
I kind of, they're different logos, but they're very similar though.
And the Alpha 9 is more of your trance vibe, right?
I mean, basically what happened, I was doing music under ARTY name for a very long time. But also back in, I think it was 2009, when I was trying to sign my, one of the tracks that I was trying to sign on some of the record labels that I would really wanted to work with. I sent them a demo. They wanted to sign it, but then they sent me the contract, and they wanted to have exclusivity on the project's name. That basically I would have to release this music only under this name on this label. So I just decided to pick another name, which was Alpha 9. I really don't remember how I came up with it because that was over 14 years ago now.
Yeah.
But then I was doing music under ARTY for so many years, and I kind of went more commercial way. It's I was signed with Interscope Records for 3 or 4 years to release the album together. And then it's one day I realized how much I missed making music, like the trance music, and we just came up with the idea that we should bring Alpha 9 back.
I like Alpha 9. It has a futuristic kind of feel to it.
Yeah, I know.
It's kind of like Citizen Number 3 or like Alpha 9. It's got that future vibe to it.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about your single Down to Love. I was looking at the lyrics, so we come up with a topic for each Life Rhythms show. And I was looking at the lyrics, and specifically the lyrics, are you ready for change to come? Are you ready to face the fear? Are you ready to rise above? When it all comes down to love.
Yeah. And you can have it all.
And you can have it all.
Usually I don't remember lyrics that I'm working on.
But you remember these.
I remember these because I've been playing it for, first of all, I've been working on this song for a month and a half. It was, it had so many stages while I was working on the song because I had an initial demo first, which was just instrumental. But then I sent the song to Jonathan Mendelsohn, who's incredible songwriter and singer, and he came up with this lyrics. I kind of like gave him a certain input. It's basically, I mean, I don't want to compare it to like Chat GPT, but it was more of a me giving him like 2 to 4 minute memo.
Like a prompt?
Yeah, with everything that I feel about this instrumental. And he magically would just change it into like turn it into most beautiful lyrics, which makes so much sense. And I think it's like I had like a single like added note or anything like that.
What was the vibe? What were some of the notes you gave him? Do you remember?
None.
No. What was like the memo in the
Oh,
beginning?
the memo.
Yeah.
Well, for Down to Love, the memo was pretty simple. I kind of told him like where the album is going to and how I feel it, and why the album called New Horizons, and it's like what's this song supposed to be about, and especially as like we've been always treating the song as the main single from the album, and it needed to pop in a way that it's like it needs to be strong lyrics, but also it needs to be very approachable for the audience, so they can it's like they could feel something about the song. So it's like more of a it's like more of a universal song about it's like love as the one feeling, but also like believing in yourself as something else,
Yeah.
Things went super crazy when we did another song with them, which was Final Frontier.
What kind of crazy?
5-minute memo. Because with Final Frontier, I knew exactly what I need from the song. It couldn't be like universal. It's like, very approachable for the audience because it was my personal song. Like that's probably like the most personal song on the album in terms of the lyrics that in there.
Okay. When I'm looking at these lyrics for Down to Love and what we were talking about,
Yeah.
what came to me when I was thinking about, you're right, how it all comes down to love. And I was like, okay, that's interesting because everything does come down to love. And I started to think about our intuition, like our instincts. And I've always had this feeling that intuition is kind of like love and fear are they're like navigating systems.
Yeah, well, it's also important to mention the fact that love is such a complex feeling that includes a lot of parameters. Like not only, I mean, I discovered it on my own. It was like over the past few years. It's like while I've been on tour before the pandemic, it was like literally never had a break. Barely saw my family, and then pandemic happened, and I came back to my hometown to spend actual time with my family because I barely saw them in like 10 years before that because I was on a tour constantly, almost every single week. And then I realized how much I love them, but also it's so important to love yourself. It's like that struck me. It was like it's such a simple concept in terms of understanding it when you came to realization, but I don't think it's like a lot of people actually get the concept of loving yourself and how important it is because then it's like you cannot really give a love to other people if you don't love yourself. Like it's
That's like the RuPaul quote, right? RuPaul, she says, if you, what does she say? If you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to love somebody else?
Exactly. And I was like, I was not reading about it. I was not like watching the podcasts about it. It was just brutal fact of me living the life that I was living.
So, okay. So what did you notice that brought you to that understanding? Because you're right. It is something that's said a lot. It almost has like a cliche energy to it, but it's so true though. It resonates, but it's like
so
you
much
had
more
to
complex.
find it.
Yeah. It's like you have to, it's like when you, when you're listening to the song and you kind of, have this concept in a song and you've written the lyrics, it's like, oh, that's pop. Like that's too like poppy lyrics. That's too cliche.
Yeah.
But it's like when you live your life and actual like this concept was like affects so many aspects of your life. It's like your personal relationship. Well, first of all, your relationship with yourself, then your personal relationship, and then your relationship with family and friends. And then when you like get to realize what it actually means, it's so much deeper. But it's like you have to get to this point yourself to fully realize what it actually stands for.
Did you reach a breaking point that brought you to this understanding? Like, did you kind of have an awareness, like, oh, I'm not taking care of
Oh yeah,
myself?
absolutely, 100%.
What happened, or what was that like?
Life, life happened, and I think I got more mature, and I started to think about other things rather than music and the tour.
That
You
were
know,
important
yeah.
to you?
It was just for me was like my life was like orbiting around only those two things. But then when pandemic hits and I was just on because all my friends that I had in LA, they all left to their like parents and families, to their like hometowns and stuff like that, and I was sitting there on my own. Like I called my mom. It was like, and I go, "Hey, mom, what do you think if I'm gonna come back in a few weeks?" Well, because it's massive distance between the United States and Russia, and it's a commitment to travel somewhere while entire world is in lockdown.
Yeah.
It's just like please, son, dude, that's long overdue now.
Mom's gonna say,
Yeah, mom
please
was
come.
so happy.
Yeah.
And I think it was like that was the moment when I realized that, um, in order to give love, you need to accept love to yourself.
Mm. So did you start to feel like you were giving more love to yourself, and then you realized, like, oh, I have this capacity that now I can also give it to other
Yeah.
people?
Yeah, well, it's like when you have a bunch of it's like over the course of, I don't know, like few years, you have some relationships, like personal relationship, and they just keep not working out,
Hmm.
and you're trying to blame everyone around you but yourself. But once you realize that, it's like, oh, it might be, I might be the reason why some of the stuff didn't work out. Not
Yeah.
necessarily like in full capacity, but it's always good to start with yourself. Like if you try to like dig into some it's like deep issues and problems, and once you try to blame someone else, like start with yourself.
Yeah. If you're experiencing a string of relationships and they're all failing, what's the one common denominator? You.
Exactly.
That's a sign of growth of consciousness, because at the lower state of consciousness, there's the victim mentality
Yeah.
where people are
Yeah.
always blaming other things, right?
All people tend to do that because that's your self-defense. Like this is your self-defense mechanism because you don't want to upset yourself because it's your fault or partly your fault.
Yeah.
It's like it's crazy and it sounds ugly, but it also sounds beautiful because once you pass that point and you have all this realization, it's way easier to leave.
And it's way easier to change yourself than the world.
Exactly.
It's liberating.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I can just focus on what I can control, which is me.
Changing myself.
Yeah.
And that's where the change came from as well. It's like it was, it's like loving yourself was part of it.
When you started loving yourself and working on yourself, did you notice the world around you kind of changed accordingly?
Got more colorful.
More colorful?
Yeah, more stuff around me. It's like all of a sudden you start to notice all kind of sorts of things. Like, that you don't necessarily need to spend 24 hours in the studio every single day, and you can take a boat and like go somewhere in a river in the middle and it's like hang out with your friends, like take a swim, and that could be your day.
Yeah.
And I didn't have those, like deliberately. Like it was my choice of not having this because I was so focused on my career. I was so focused on the shows. I was so focused on making the music, and I had to do it every single day for some reason. And frankly, I'm still doing it, but it's, it's by my choice. And I know that at some point it's like I need to take a break and I need to look around me because there's a lot of beautiful things that are happening right now rather than music and, your career,
It's
so to
interesting
speak.
about love because a lot of people think of love as an emotion, but I've been researching it, and and it's actually a survival instinct. Like love, scientists believe love developed millions of years ago, over millions of years, as a survival mechanism for us to mate and bond and stay safe and to procreate and
Yeah,
to
make babies.
make babies.
It's way easier to make babies when you're in love with someone.
Right, because also if someone loves you, it's like a pull. It keeps them there,
It keeps them together
keeps them
as well.
together, and they're more likely to have a family, to successfully raise the kids. And I was also reading,
It's also like it is defensive mechanism because
yeah,
once you're in relationship with the person that you love and the person that you have, kids with, it's like all of like the self-awareness, your self-awareness and awareness for your family goes like through the roof because that's the most important people that you need to take care of.
yeah,
Yeah.
the chemicals in your brain change, and you become more protective and possessive of the people.
Yeah, that's definitely a chemical process, but I do want to believe that there is something underneath it.
That's
Like if we talk about soul and stuff like that.
yeah. What is it about that? Do you think
I want to believe that it's just not chemical process.
that there's something more than that?
Yeah. I mean, listen, a scientist, I'm not a scientist, but it's like I know a lot about that. Like scientists in me like tells as just a chemical process, but at the same time as a musician, as a producer, as a person that creates something, I do want to believe there is something else. There is like many layers of, person have a soul and person can actually make his own decisions rather than just observing the world and following the path that brain tells you to do.
It has to be more than chemicals. I
I hope
agree with
so.
you. Yeah.
It might not, but what kind of world we would live in, you know?
In science, they don't understand much about consciousness. It's like you can try to quantify it with. I mean, you went to school you have a master's in
Yeah.
mathematics, and what was the other one? Computer science,
Programming.
programming.
Yeah, I'm a system programmer,
That
system coding.
that's interesting to me. You studied the math and science in school,
Yeah.
and then the career you pursued is art and
Well, honestly,
creative.
by a few years in a university, I couldn't see myself doing it. It's just too like not too boring, but it can be fascinating. But at the same time, I couldn't see myself doing numbers my whole life. It's just
Yeah,
it can be creative,
I was
but
just gonna ask, is it a
but in
creative?
order to for the mathematic for you like for the mathematic be creative for you, it's like you need to have a very special mindset, and I definitely didn't have that. It's like some of the kids in my class, they definitely had it, and they were basically recruited by like Google immediately after they finished. That was not my path, and I didn't want to do that. I
What
was
what is
like,
that mindset that they have?
it's just like you see numbers as I see music notes, and you put them together in a certain way, and it don't make sense.
Ah.
Well, for like a lot of people, it doesn't make any sense. But it's like for them when they were putting the numbers together, and I'm like super simplifying it because like mathematics, it's very, I mean, it's probably one of the most complex, you know, um, one of the most complex things in our entire world that can explain a lot of stuff. Combine it with physics is like that's how we know all that stuff about universe, how our world operates. Like you can all explain with mathematical sentences, but at the same time, it's like I was not got in it. It was just not for me. So instead, I chose to create something that I'm good with, you know? Like, I'm not saying I was terrible with mathematics, but
Well, you graduated, so
yeah, exactly. I
that's a
mean,
sign.
and it was brutal. Trust me. It was like, especially when you already, like, I had a lot of obligations at that moment when I was trying to graduate because I already was playing the shows and I was already releasing tons of music. Like, I think 2010, it was between the fourth and the fifth year in university. I released like over 30 songs. It was like original tracks and remixes. So it was full commitment for me. And I was still studying.
Did that discipline come naturally, making the music? Because that's a lot of work. That's a lot of music.
Yeah.
It just
Well, music school had a lot to do with it. It definitely, it's like people, I got this question so many times. It's like, do I need go to music school in order to be a musician? It's like, absolutely not. You don't have to. Uh, it's like, why you did it? I was like, well, because my granny took me to music school,
Yeah.
and I've been always a family person. I have so much love for my mom and my dad and my granny, and I just didn't want to disappoint her. But then I fell in love with music, um, and but more than anything, music school was learning the discipline and work ethic.
and you carried that later.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I carried it through my entire life, basically.
You had mentioned earlier about love and about family relationships, and when you it reminded me of this Harvard study. It's called the Harvard Grant Study. I don't know if you
Okay.
heard of it. It was a 75-year study about they were trying to figure out they followed 268 Harvard undergraduates from the classes of 1938 to 1940, and they followed them for 75 years, collecting data on various aspects of their lives to try to
Okay.
figure out what makes a meaningful life. What are the common denominators? And it all came down to love, literally. Like that was after
you go.
75 years, that was the conclusion, was that the ones that lived the longest, that were that had feelings of success and fulfillment, all had a strong social community around them. They all had a partner or close family and friends.
Yeah, well, listen, people that you surround yourself with, this is basically what your life is going to look like in 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 years. It's like they have a tremendous effect on the decisions that you make, that the new friendship that you make, the business decisions, the personal decisions, and especially if you actually have like an amazing partner next to you guys gonna like drive each other to the new heights of success, or like family success, like having more kids and having like trying to reach for like more healthy and wealthy life, you know?
Yeah. It's like that quote, the show me who you spend your time with and I'll show you who you are.
Basically, I mean, it takes time to shape this up, but yeah, yeah, I truly believe in it.
Are you mindful about who you let in your circle now? Who you
Yeah,
spend time with?
absolutely. Yeah, my best friend, who's also my manager, that I knew since end of 2014. He's was like he's crazy in a way how much he works. It's pretty wild, and how many businesses he has, and how it's like focused he is. And like 2 3 years after that, I noticed that then myself that I cannot leave the studio while something is not done, and I started to spend way more time working on my stuff than I would do before.
So he rubbed off on you in a positive way?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I would hate myself if I was someone else's right now, if I was like work class. I know it kind of contradicts with, loving yourself and was like looking around yourself and acknowledge the things that are around you rather than music. But it's also important to have a strong work ethic. It's important to push yourself, like working on the music, or is like playing the shows with like no sleep. Like, clearly, you don't want to do it every single week, but it's important to find your limits and how far you can push yourself.
Yeah, you learn that valuable skill of sacrificing the present for a better future.
Yeah, I mean, there's like you need to be kind of you know, sensible about it and don't push yourself way too hard because I know I can. That's what I did with the New Horizons album. Uh, 3 days before when entire thing needed to be shipped, like the full record needed to be shipped, I came back from 2 shows that I had over the weekend, and I made it to the studio on Monday, 7 in the morning, and I left the studio on Wednesday, 6 p.m.
Wow.
And I was not taking naps. I was not taking breaks. I was just taking breaks for the going to the restroom and get some water. But it was 52 to 54 hour session just to get everything done, get it push it to the finish line. And that's when I really had to find what kind of limits I have.
Did you feel like the pressure helped you step up accordingly to the
Yeah.
project?
Oh yeah, 100%. But also it was crazy journey. Trust me. It was like things like uh on Tuesday night, which was already it was 35, 40 hours in. I had mental breakdown. I had to stumble into the restroom. It was right for 30 minutes. I couldn't stop. I didn't necessarily needed it. It's I didn't feel like that's what I want to do, but it's that's what my body wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then when I was done with it, I came back to the studio and I was like, okay, I'm time to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Felt great.
It's like that Stoic quote, it's excellence withers without a worthy adversary.
Yeah.
It's like you need that adversary to achieve excellence.
Yeah.
Like good pressure.
It is a good pressure for sure. But again, it's not a word of advice that I would give to people on every single day basis, because after that, I had to take a break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fine balance. Arty, we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, I would like to dive in more and talk to you about your album, New Horizons. And I'd love to find out more about your relationship with your instincts, because I can tell you navigate things well. And this idea of using love and fear to do that, I'd love to talk to you more about that. So we're going to take a break and we'll be right back on Adobe Radio. Welcome back to Life Rhythms Radio Show. I'm your host, Ryan Skyy. I've got my guest with me today, ARTY. We're featuring ARTY's project Alpha 9, which is more of the trance style music that he does. And specifically your single, Down to Love, off the New Horizons album. Now, for every episode, I write a quote that's tied into the topic. So I'm going to read the quote I wrote for this one. It goes like this. Evolution is on your side. Over millions of years, the experience of falling in love, using our emotions as a compass, and making choices with our gut have evolved for you. And they live in you as tools that you can use to navigate your life. So take time each day to quiet the noise outside and tune in to how you feel, and you'll tap into your very own biological wisdom.
I do it every single day, actually.
Good, because that's what I want to talk to you about today.
That's what it's. I've been doing it for 868 days now.
Is it the Headspace app?
Wim Hof.
What is it?
Wim Hof.
Wim Hof.
Breathe in.
Okay.
Yeah, it's basically you do 4 rounds of deep inhales, exhales, and then you hold your breath on an exhale. You start with 1 minute
until right before you die.
And here's the funniest part. Is it was fascinating to me when my best friend introduced me to it, and now we have a Wim Hof club where we need to check in every single day, otherwise you're gonna get kicked out. this
Ha.
beautiful club. Yeah, so it's kind of commitment, but it became a thing is like when you actually need to shut yourself off entirely of like world around you and you need to focus on your breathing. But what it does, it actually is like you can focus on so many parts of your like health and the mind and like your like gut system and all that crazy stuff. Like you can lower the temperature of your body dramatically if you want to. And it just helps you. It's like, I don't know, whenever I have a headache, it's like just doing like 1 2 rounds and the headache is completely gone. It's fascinating. And I think it's like I was kind of like I took it as a sport at some point, and I think I made it to like 5.5 minutes, just not breathing whatsoever
How long?
on a
5?
5.5
Wow.
on an exhale. It's like you don't have like anything in your lungs because it's in your body. It's like you full of oxygen, like all your blood cells, and it's crazy.
And did you start to feel, because I was watching something about the new Avatar movie,
Hmm.
and how they were training the actors.
I didn't watch it yet.
I haven't seen the movie. I just saw like behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
And they were training the actors to hold their breath underwater. And they were saying that at first the body panics, but over time you learn to like work through that panic.
Yeah, I mean it's the same concept with deliberate cold exposure. It's like when you do the cold plunges or the cold shower.
Yeah.
It's like it's basically the same concept because your body is going to be in a very comfortable state. But if you do it deliberately, there's so many benefits to it, and you can actually push it through. It's like as long as it's not environment that is meant to kill you, you will be fine if you have a certain mindset for that.
That's fascinating to me that we have our two brains. We've got our brain that people know about, and a lot of people don't know the gut is a brain, the
Hmm.
body is a brain, and
Yeah.
you're talking about kind of like the two brains battling. It's like we've evolved as species to the point where mentally, intellectually, we know we can override our body. So our body's saying like, no, danger, but you're like, no, this is not dangerous.
Well, and that's the reason. Another reason why I was doing a Wim Hof breathing for like over 2 years now, because that's what it also does to you. It's like you can override certain like panicking states uh, in your body because like you become much more in tune, like between your body and your mind. Because a lot of it goes to is like is like system failures because your mind is thinking that your body is about to die, but it's not happening. Like panic attacks. Like I had a panic attack for the first time last year, and it was the scariest thing that I've ever experienced in my life. And the matter of the fact, my body was not trying to die, but my mind was sending all the signals that my body is about to die. So this contradiction between like two systems was
Yeah.
terrifying. Yeah,
Was there a trigger to it?
yeah, the album.
So
Yeah.
I see. Was this during that stretch of couple days that you were in the studio?
No, it was before that, but it was kind of again, I was in a state that I was pushing so hard that you tend to forget the things that you're saying to yourself. Like what I was saying is like you need to love yourself, but it just doesn't. It doesn't mean that it's like give some love to yourself. It means that you need to take care of yourself in all sorts of ways. It's like you need to sleep, you need to eat, you need to exercise. And I was kind of like failing in most of it because it was so like I had a tunnel vision. It's like that what needs to be done and nothing else matters. And that's how I got my first panic attack. It's terrifying.
And that drove you to this app, to this new practice? Did you start searching for a
Oh
way
no,
through
no,
it?
no. I was like I've been doing Wim Hof for like I think it's like the first time when I did it was back in September 2020. So, but it helped me fight with it. It was like the thing about panic attacks and why it's so scary. It's like the first time when it happens to you, you don't know where it is. You think it's like you're literally dying.
It almost feels like a heart attack, right? Like
Yeah,
tightness
well,
in the chest.
because your mind, like your brain, is sending the signal to your like systems that will have like critical failures. So you get an injected like 24-hour dose of adrenaline, and that's why it's like you feel like you're about to have a heart attack. It's like that's why it's like your heart is speeding up so dramatically. It's like that's what's supposed to happen when your body is in critical state. And that's when mind, like, that's when your brain's sending the signal. It's like, okay, it's like we need, it's like 1,000 times multiplied dose of adrenaline to your heart. So it's like it just keep beating. But when it happens, while you completely normal, maybe it's like, yeah, I was really like, I had like a bunch of the sleepless nights and etc., but it was not ready to die, you know?
Yeah. The body thinks there's a saber-toothed tiger chasing you, but what's actually happening is you have an album coming out
Yeah.
and a deadline for the
And
album.
it felt like that, by the way. It felt like Cybertooth Tiger was chasing
It kind of
me.
feels like life and death, right? Sometimes.
Yeah, especially when you have a deadline.
Because there's pressure. You've got all of this teams, all of these systems in place, right?
Yeah.
The framework is in place. It's interesting to me because thinking about how, like, before we had language, we developed these instincts where we had feelings, but we couldn't intellectualize it and speak about it and name it. We felt certain ways, and it was just a way of staying safe in our environment. That hasn't changed, but now we have society, we've got culture, we've got language now, and we've got technology, and it's kind of weird to still be dealing with these primitive systems that are useful if we tune into
They
them.
are. It's like without these primitive systems, we
need them.
would not be here right now.
Yeah, and I want to talk about
Yeah.
these primitive systems. So this like feeling of love and fear, just like a gut instinct of what decisions to make. What's your relationship with that? Because you've done a lot. You've been doing this since 2012, right?
Uh,
Somewhere
well,
around there.
I've been touring since 2011 on pretty much nonstop basis, but I've been making music since 2006.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you've collaborated with Armin van Buuren, Above and Beyond, One Republic. You signed to Enhanced Music. You've released on many different labels.
Yeah.
So I was curious, and I wanted to ask you about how did you navigate that? How are you making these decisions to know what steps to take, when a song is where a song should go, whether to release a song, whether not to release a song, all
Sure,
these
gosh.
decisions. Yeah.
Sure, God. And listen, it's not only your instincts; it's also ability to make mistakes and ability, which is much more important, not just to make mistakes, but to learn from them, because that helps you to navigate through the world way, way better. Because I think it's like there is something beautiful about making mistakes that doesn't have the fatal outcome.
Yeah.
As long as you can learn from them, the next time when you're about to make a bigger move, at least you're not gonna do the same stupid stuff that you might did before. So it kind of works. It all works together, and also things like everything has its time and place. And as the producers, musicians, these people, which includes me, I guess, why talking like about that, like in a third place. It's like you are a creative person, which means you're a mess in terms of what affects you on a daily basis, what inspires you, and what doesn't inspire you. It could be a movie, it could be a book that you read, it could be random song on the radio that you never listened before, but the specific song that you heard in a moment inspired you to do something
Yeah.
that you didn't you didn't have any plans to do is like seconds before that. So, and it's the same thing kind of goes to is like bigger, bigger picture. And you can make it systematic, but at certain point, like you need to decide of whether you want to stay on the same path or you want to take the completely different approach. And that's what happened with me when I was working on this album so many times. As I told you before, is like back in early 2021, I made almost 20 tracks from top to the bottom. They were all done for this album, but I scrapped all of it. Not a single track made it to the actual final version. And then I did the second pass on the album, and I scrapped like 75% of it, and almost like 3, 4 tracks made it to the final version again. And it was like step by step when I was trying to kind of like shape it up, the album in a way how I saw that. Because it's like that's the another conversation I need to have a place that the albums for me, not just my albums, but whenever I listen to the album, what I'm hoping for is the journey and the story behind it.
Yeah.
And I think every single track and its place on the album tells it if you do it in a right way. I'm not saying the right way, but it's like if you wanna in a way of telling the story. So it's like all of this, scrapping process was trying to kind of like get to the core of an idea behind the album
Mm.
and layer it in order to like tell the full story. It's kind of like script writing, um, in a way, but it's it's like I have a little bit more room to move around because it just doesn't go like that. It's like whenever you do the storytelling with the album, you can kind of jump all over the place a little bit, but you just need to make sure there's a silver lining through all the tracks.
Yeah, it's interesting to start out a creative project from nothing. You're making something, and the work reveals itself to you over time.
Yeah.
What when you did that first pass and you did 20 some songs, was there a feeling? Is there a feeling that you look for to know whether or not to use songs for a project?
Yeah. And it was kind of, it's really hard to explain because it was so many feelings underneath and so many ideas underneath that I had, but I couldn't really dig through them because it's like my mind would be occupied with something else. Like, oh, I need to finish this, I need to do that. And once you look at the bigger picture, is when it reveals itself to you. That's what happened with New Horizons. I think it was back in, I want to say March 2022, when I kind of needed to have a body of work so I can look at it and kind of like
Mm.
put the tracks in order to make sure that this is what it's supposed to sound like. And I did that. And I was sitting with my team, and Kyle, my best friend, my manager, he told me, he's like, you have 1 minute to come up with the name of this album, or 2 minutes. I think it was one.
Wow.
And I was looking at the track list order, and I was looking to, I was looking at the names of the tracks because I didn't name them in a specific way because that's what the album was about. Like I didn't know what the album was about. It was just like my God that like took me there. And the first thing that I see, there was a track called Nebula that didn't make it there, and then I have a track called Speed of Light, and then I have a track called New Horizons, and then I has like all of this like space theme tracks, which that's how they sound like. And I'm looking at New Horizons, like, yeah, that's it. And it's like all of a sudden, it's like I have full realization what this album is about and why I was doing those tracks
Wow.
when I was doing those. And that was revelation for me. It was like I was shocked how it was in front of me all the time. But once I realized the name of the album, was like, yeah, this is definitely about space exploration. This definitely about like pushing to the new limits, which I was doing at the time already. It was all about to like find that something. It's like many times I asked myself, what's outside of the universe? Like, is there world there? It's like,
Ah,
what else? I mean, I'm in a space exploration a lot. Like, I
yeah, me
love that
too.
stuff. And then it's like it finally hit me on like way deeper level that it's not really about space exploration. It's like itself. It's more about uh, self exploration.
Ooh, I
That's what
like
it
that.
was.
Yeah,
That's what it
yeah.
was because like the especially the track that I was talking about earlier, Final Frontier, another track that I did with Jonathan Mendelsohn when I sent him this crazy 5 minutes memo. And that memo actually contained like all of my thoughts about the album is like why it's called New Horizons. That it's about space exploration, but it's like way deeper and it's a metaphor to it's like you've been exploring yourself because I do believe that every single human being is like vast of like things that are unknown. It's like if you dig deeper to yourselves, like you will find a whole new universe of like things that you never explored before and you didn't know about yourself. And it all takes just to think about it and actually accept the fact that there is so much new things that you can learn about yourself.
That's what I say on the show. Is I've recently started opening the show with "Hello, my inner explorers," and the show is about inner and outer exploration
Yeah.
because it is about these things. And I was watching a talk with Jordan Peterson recently, and he spoke about artists. And I loved the way he put it. Was he said his approach to it is that artists kind of live in this. They're halfway in reality and halfway in the metaphysical world. And
Sometimes it
artists, yeah,
moves.
I kind of feel like I'm in a dream state a lot of the day.
Yeah.
And Jordan says that artists, we're looking and looking and looking and looking and looking, and then we see and we put it in the art, and that artists teach people how to see because we see something in the world, we put it in the art, and other people then can see what we see. And then we're also showing them how they can look at the world for themselves.
That's beautiful way of putting it. Yeah.
Do you feel like you partake in that process?
Uh, I I always try to, but I think it's like with this specific album, it was more about it's like telling my story that then turned into the fact that it's just not about me anymore. And kind of yeah, so that basically proves the point that it's really really important to just not giving up on yourself and say it's like, well, I'm ordinary man or I'm ordinary woman. It's like I'm ordinary person. Like nobody's ordinary.
Yeah.
There's it's like there's so many hidden layers in every single person. It's wild.
Yeah. There's a lot to our onion
Uh,
to peel,
yeah. Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah. And that's it's like that's what I was doing with the album. It was like peeling off the layers,
Yeah.
and that then I came up with a it's like concept of like space exploration because you know again it's like I told you that before that I love that stuff, and all of a sudden it's like when you peeling off the last layer and it all makes so much sense to you because now it's about you. And that space exploration is like it's basically is the same concept of exploring yourself because the space is so vast. There is like, and it's unknown and it's
Yeah.
so scary and it can be scary, but at the same time, it can be beautiful. And
Yeah.
I was like, and the same thing goes to like self exploring too. There is so many scary things that you don't want to know about yourself, but also there is so many beautiful that you yet don't know about yourself.
And the crazy thing about space is it's been there since the beginning of time. And then if you look inward, it's unexplored, but it's also, there's a timeless element inside as well.
Yeah.
We only have a couple minutes. We have like 1 minute left.
Okay.
But I want to touch on your single Rhythm of the Heart,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's coming out. It'll be out by the time this is out. And that went through some iterations, right?
That was one of the last tracks that I made for the album. I think it was like I did it. It was a first or second to last one that I finished because I actually, while I was working on the album, is like, and you already know how crazy the process was, and like how much efforts and work it took, but also while I was like taking it to the end, like to the finish line, I all of a sudden found crazy inspiration in music that I didn't have in years. And Rhythm of Your Heart is one of those tracks.
I love that title. It's a beautiful title.
Yeah.
Did
I mean, also like if you listen to the lyrics, it's pretty cool.
When you finished it, did you feel a sense of completion? The album's ready?
I felt a sense of completion for the album being ready, but also I felt like this is definitely a new chapter for Alpha 9 project. It's like that's where it goes to. So if you go through the album, there's a lot of tracks that's like old school Alpha 9 sound or ARTY sound, because that's what it is. But then it's like it starts to evolve towards the end of the album, and then it's like completely takes like a new shape, and that's where I wanted to drive my project to. But also, it kind of happened. Like it just
Wow.
happened. It was like when I was looking at the it was like the final track list. It was like, okay, that makes sense why I was doing what I was doing.
It's a poignant way to end that album. And are you finding yourself now looking to the future? Like, oh, I can't wait to
Well,
get
the
into
last
what's
track on
next?
the album called Into the Unknown.
Okay, so the last track on the album isn't the last one you finished.
Yeah.
But the last one you finished is Rhythm of the Heart.
Second to last one.
Second to last.
Yeah.
Towards the end.
Towards the end, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Arty, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
It was a real pleasure.
Yeah, it was indeed. Likewise.
Everyone, check out Arty online, Alpha 9, and the song Down to Love is specifically the New Horizons album. Check it out, stream it. It's definitely worth a listen. Okay, we'll see you next time on Life
See you
Rhythms.
next time.
Bye.
Bye.